Good evening. Welcome to the Committee on Finance April 30th meeting. I'm here. I need to remind you, you're being audio and video recorded. And we're going to do something a little different tonight, where public comment is going to be after a presentation by Tom Scanlon, the auditing results. And that will come after that, but before our discussion of the opt-in provision. Those are our two. Oh, you can't hear? Hold on just a sec. Okay. I'll just, okay, we're going to wait a minute to resolve a issue with the hearing system.
I wonder if it needs just,
or maybe closer. Maybe it was just me. No, she's gone.
She's gone.
She's like the wind. All right. Okay, we're going to get started. After a roll call.
I'm sorry.
No, take. This is important. Let's get this straightened out. We're just taking a minute.
oh, it's 6, okay.
It'll work best
Okay.
if you put it around your neck.
There's a little bit of reverb. Okay, I think it's okay. Okay, if you're just joining, I was saying that the public comment period is going to be after a presentation on the findings of the Scanlon Associates on the city auditing. So we're going to start with that, but first we need a roll call.
Sure. Councillor Maori.
Here.
Councillor Moulton.
Here.
I haven't seen Councillor Elkins yet, who may be joining us late, and Councillor Labarge.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. So we did get the minutes of March 5th. They were quite impressive and long. That was a very intense meeting that was very long. So thank you for that. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 5th.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councillor Labarge, seconded by Councillor Moulton. Any discussion? Corrections? Okay. Roll call, please.
Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Councillor Moulton.
Yes.
And Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay.
I just realized we're all here for now until.
Oh, right, I can do it. I vote, right. Except I want to say aye.
Yeah.
Okay. So, welcome, Tom. It's nice to see you. Thank you for making the effort to be here this night. Yeah. So you want to just go over the yeah.
Kind of, for those who don't know me, I'm Tom Scanlon Jr. I'm the managing partner at Scanlon Associates. We specialize in auditing municipalities across the state.
It's green, right? Yeah, maybe push the button. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah, green means good. So it's going to kind of walk you through your financials, what we do, what's the purpose of an audit, and all that good stuff.
Could you push that mic up a little bit further? Yeah. Al, can you hear him all right? Okay.
Okay, cool. So we do a financial audit. We don't do a forensic audit. It's a different type of engagement. We don't do a Doge audit, which is a big thing out there right now. It's a risk-based audit. We're opining on your financial statements, and that's how we approach things. So if we look at your financial statements, if we turn to pages 17 and 18. And governments are unique, where they have actually two sets of financial statements. This is your entity-wide statements. As we look at these has all your liabilities on there, has your fixed assets, which you're depreciating, where you don't see depreciation in your budget, and those sort of things. So some of the key factors to look at this, on page 18, if you go under governmental activities, and you go all the way to the bottom, you see unrestricted.
Can we screen share that, Laura, please? Thank you.
You're saying, and that's your net position at the bottom. You generally don't want to see that with a negative in brackets around unrestricted. That means you're not doing so well. But the drivers of that, and again, this is entity-wide, it takes a look at all your liabilities, is if you go up under non-current, you'll see the net OPEB liability of 117 million and the net pension liability of 61 million. Those are the drivers that are putting you into the negative. Your pension, you're on a funding schedule, which I believe, if memory serves me right, you're scheduled to be funded in 2038. Does that sound about right? So you are on a funding schedule, you're paying that, so you should see that liability generally go away come 2038. Your OPEB liability, that is kind of all over the place. You have an actuarial study done, there's a lot of assumptions in there. For instance, healthcare costs, experience, discount rate. You did adopt a OPEB trust, which you have approximately about 5.5 million in, and you funded it in your budget of 769,000. Again, OPEB, I know I've said it year after year, it's really long-term thinking. It's promises you made to your employees that you're going to pay a portion of their health insurance when they retire. So given that, one position can cause multiple health insurance costs. So you have the active person in that position, you could have 4 to 5 retirees that you're paying health insurance for. Again, so you made a promise that you're going to pay 50% of the health insurance when they retire. I call it a soft cost. It's not like if they're working here for 30 years, you're paying them on the payroll, they're getting a check, the money's leaving your bank into them. It's kind of a hard cost, but there was this promise that you're going to pay X amount of their health insurance. And that's what's reflected in here. Again, it's really long-term thinking. You're not going to fund a $117 million liability overnight, but it should be in your thought process while you're setting your budgets. I don't know if you have any questions on that. That thing to take away is there's health insurance costs can have multiple in multiple positions. Like I said, like one position can have 5 or 6 costs associated with it, and that's kind of the bigger thing when you're looking at personnel. And again, I think you're addressing where you can address it. You're funding, $700,000 in the OPEB trust. But when you look at 5.5 million compared to your liability, so again, have it in your thought process when you're setting budgets, and understand like what it is. And that's kind of the driver when you look at your entity-wide statements. And I usually say like these first 2 statements are really for accountants. They take in everything, show the liabilities. I don't concentrate too much on these, but if you turn to page 20.
Are those stable costs? I mean, they fluctuate.
Yeah, there's like, so they're actually determined.
Fluctuate or kind of wild card?
Wild card, the OPEB wild card fluctuate. Pension, you know the target. You can make safe assumptions, life expectancies. OPEB, it's health insurance costs, and you're projecting what your health insurance costs are going to be out 30 years from now. So that's the...
Tom, do you want us to hold questions, or should counselors ask?
No, I'd rather ask as you go along.
You can just directly ask
Yeah.
questions as he presents.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know for many, many times now that you've come in and going over your job with the finance director and also the directors of departments and so forth.
Yep.
And I know at one point you were a little concerned about a couple of departments, but you felt that they needed more management of learning the process a little bit better than what they were doing. That
Yep.
was several years ago.
Yep.
Is this happening now? Do you know? Because we get new people coming in departments and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a learning curve in some departments, areas of concern we have. We definitely do a little more testing in certain areas.
And so what do you do about that? If you see that they need, like, upgrading with themselves on the learning process, what do you do as an auditor?
Various things, if we see there's a extensive learning curve. We'll do a lot more testing in that area. It's with departments, so we're seeing journal entries between the departments. So first, we kind of like to test to say, is there any misstatements in your financial statements with the inexperience? And then kind of encourage to get a support system in place, and learn and educate.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully I answer your question.
Did Council Moulton have a question?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, question specifically about the OPEB, because you described it as being all over the place. And I'm not sure if that's just a neutral observation or a negative one. Is there more to that?
There's a lot of assumptions that go into it, like healthcare trends, discount rate, life expectancy tables. So that's what I mean, it's all over the place when you project. I know your liability is not zero, but I'm not too sure it's 117 million either.
Oh, okay, so you're saying there are a lot of variables.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask Director Nardi, I believe we reduced our OPEB contribution this fiscal year?
Yes, for 2025
Yes,
and for 2026, yes.
for both fiscal years.
Yep, but we also make a contribution from leftover in the health
Insurance budget.
insurance line, thank you. Whatever's left in that, plus all the fringe that we take in from grants, the fringe benefits, we move that into OPEB at the end of the year.
Okay, so I wondered, Tom, if the reduction in the appropriation was a concern.
No, considering the times we're in. I think we're seeing that a lot across what's coming for our futures here. We're seeing that kind of the first thing to cut is that OPEB funding. Again, yeah, before, when you put money into the trust, the only way to get it out is to charge healthcare costs there for your retirees. So you're kind of restricting it, but you do have a large health insurance cost for your retirees within your budget, so it'd be pretty easy to get it out. But again, as we're coming up on these times, it'd probably be the first thing I would cut. Yep.
Excuse me, can people turn their mics on so we can...
Sure. Oh, thank you.
I think mine's green.
Maybe not.
Oh,
It was me, sorry.
I can't hear you either, so maybe you're not
Huh.
close enough to your mic?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Thinking.
Rock star that thing.
I know. American Idol here.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
So on page 20, these are your more traditional financial statements. These kind of relate to, and then what we do is if you look on page 20, you'll see the top part, your assets, as we look at your balance sheet. And so we're defining risk on your financial statements, and we're trying to find risk where it lies because we're opining on them. So when we look, like your two number one assets are your cash and investments, which they total for governmental funds about 101 million. So we are doing a lot of testing at the ground level there with bank statements. We're looking at your June 30th reconciling items, making sure they have support documentation behind, like outstanding checks. They'll trace them through to July. So we're doing a lot of testing in the collector's and treasurer's office. And you can see your other large asset is your property taxes receivables. You can see property taxes, 1.6 million outstanding. We're going in a collector's office and looking to see is there detail behind that number, and if there are any variances. So if there's a variance with a detailed list on your balance sheet, then we'll go a little bit further. So that's how we're kind of designing our tests, because it relates back to your financial statements. That's what we're trying to find where the misstatements could lie, and we're identifying controls. Like, so you're reconciling your cash every month. That is a control. When your department head incurs an expenditure, they're putting it on a warrant and it's being properly signed off on. So signatures are important to us when we're going in, we're getting the ledger, we're pulling a sample of invoices, and we're going in certain accounts, we're looking and we're making sure there's an invoice behind it, and the signature, all the signatures are there. So that's saying your controls are working. We're going to rely upon the controls. So as invoice comes in, it ends up in the right account, and it's being signed off by the department head. So we're doing a lot of testing in those areas, and that's how it kind of relates to here. And as we look at your fund balance for the general fund, And you can see the focal point here is unassigned, that 32,815,759. That is your free cash and your stabilization funds for GAAP purposes. Again, we don't want to see some like grant end up in the general fund because that's going to be misstated. So as we look at that number, that 32 million, that is very healthy when it comes to standards like baselines when we compare it to your budget is approximately 115 million. So as a benchmark that's out in the field, the 32 million divided by is about 28%. So when you look at your reserves, you're very healthy in that regard. And as it's broken down, your free cash number is about 11.6, and your stabilization numbers are 18 million. And then if you look at the assigned number, the 19 million, that is encumbrances that you're bringing forward to next budget. So if you have a vote to do a project, let's say $1 million to, redo the sidewalks in downtown, it wasn't fully spent at the end of June 30th, that'll carry over through a PO and being properly approved to the next fiscal year.
And where will that show up in the next fiscal budget, in the same place?
Yeah, so if you turn to page 24 while we're on that, and this is your budget, it's probably the single most important financial statement when it comes to like management and overlooking. You can see the amounts carry forward on the expenditure side. That's what could carry forward from 2023 into 24 to 17 million. And you can see the bulk of it is in capital, 14.3. So these are obligations. They're going to be assigned PO, assigned contracts. Again, they're being reviewed on a yearly basis. And we usually use like a 3-year trend. If your capital project or project hasn't happened, we'll kind of question it. So that gets carried over. So when you look, 17 million got carried over. Then you look at the end of the year, 18.4 got carried into 2025. So those balances are classified as assigned. There's some assignment to them, so it's not fully unrestricted. So they're not counted towards your reserves. So as we're on page 24, this is how your free cash is kind of developed. When we look at your budget versus actual, see on the revenue side, you came up with revenue projections of 111 million, and you took in 117 million, about 5.5 million over what you projected. The bulk of it coming from investment income. Again, I think that's more of an outlier. We've been seeing amongst all our communities in 2024, investment income's been coming in a lot higher. I don't know if you're going to get that same kind of projection for 2025 and 2026. I wish I knew the answer to that because I wouldn't be here then. But again, you're very conservative, and that's what's generating your free cash. So again, if we go back to your financial statements when we're defining risk, we don't want to see a grant ending up in your fund revenues. Again, because that's going to inflate that 32 million, which is getting the focal point. And we don't want to see the reverse, so we don't want to see a general fund receipt sitting out in your special revenue funds. So as we go through and do our tests, that's what we're kind of assessing the risk at. So your free cash in this budget, if we go all the way down the bottom, was 6.9 million. That's what you generated in free cash towards that 11 million that gets certified. So you're roughly about $4 million of unused free cash from the prior year. So again, if you vote $1 million from free cash to fund stabilization, you're not changing your total reserves, you're just renaming it. That makes sense?
Right.
So I think, I know a lot of people say, oh, we expect our reserves to be higher because we took $4 million of free cash and put it in stabilization. We just went from one reserve to the other reserve. So then as we look, if we go back to page 21, this is your statement of change. And as we look, so your number one revenue in the general fund is property taxes. Roughly, you took in about just under 75 million. And on the intergovernmental side, 15 million. That's your Chapter 70, your unrestricted governmental aid, vets, blind, surviving spouse monies. So we get a report from the state that says, what did you give the city of Northampton for state revenues? And it'll be a mix of, it could be school grants. We're tying those all in, making sure they're ending up in the right buckets. And again, we're also testing your controls at that point. So when a receipt comes into the treasurer's office, you want to see go to the right fund. So if it's for a grant, it's going to end up in the non-major funds. Again, you have controls in place, so we don't want to see a Title I grant end up in the general fund, because again, your free cash is going to be higher on that guy, it's going to get over-certified. So those are the type of assessments we're doing on your financial statements, where the risk lies. So you have sound controls in place to identify all that, and that's kind of what we're doing on these financial statements. That's our whole goal, is to opine on them. So users, when you got into the bond market, the bond rating agencies are using your audit, and they're looking at your opinion, all that good stuff. So that's kind of it on the financials. That's kind of what I want to go over with you. I don't know if you have any specific more questions on the financial end of it. I know municipal finance is pretty complex.
Yeah, no, I was just curious of how we stack up, you know, if something seems unusual to you compared to other similar communities, just in terms of reserves or spending or saving.
I mean, your reserves are good. Keep in mind that I think it was 2022. You should have seen a big jump up in your free cash because the ARPA funds, we used the $10 million revenue loss to fund cities' budgets, which indirectly increased your free cash. So if you keep that in the back of your minds, so your reserves are very sound. 28% is very good. I'm a big reserve guy. I'm always going to promote reserves. You should not use reserves to fund ongoing expenditures. For instance, like taking free cash or stabilization and fund salaries. Salaries are always going to be there. But if you funded, let's say we did communities, like they use X amount of free cash to reduce the tax rate, knowing that debt payments are going to be falling off in future years. Well, okay, they're going to stop. You're kind of funding those, so those are kind of one-time things, as long as you don't have more debt kicking in. So the way you use reserves, I think, is very sound. That said, if there's ever an environment or a climate to use your reserves to fund your budget, your next few years are probably the climate could understandably so to do, because I think we're in some interesting times. But that's for governance to decide that.
Right.
But knowing when you do that, you're taking a one-time funding source that ain't going to be not going to be there in future years unless you're generating it. So if you're using $6 million of free cash to fund your budget, but you're also generating $6 million every year,
Right. Or you have a plan.
or have a plan.
Yeah.
But again, I'm a big reserve guy. They're when you go into the bond market, they're good, which they're measured by. But again, I think the future budget's coming up. If there's any time to use reserves, is probably.
Are you saying that because of the instability of the?
Yeah, just with cuts coming
Market.
down. With school grants, I don't know where that all stands. Like I said, we're in some interesting times.
Director, did you?
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to clarify. When you say that, you're actually referring to, depending on what the economy does and whether there's federal cuts to grants that we rely on.
Yeah,
That's what you mean that
Yeah, correct.
in using reserves, is
Yeah.
to cover those. Okay,
Yeah, so
right, thank you.
You have approximately about $12 million in federal revenue. If any of that is cut, you got to replace it or cut the service.
Yeah.
So, like I said, if there's ever an environment to have that,
My only other question was about our capital spending and how, similar communities how we stack up in terms of that.
as far as like addressing your capitals and.
Yeah, does it seem like we're kind of on par with other communities in terms of how much we're spending on capital projects? Or does it seem like we're high or low?
Off the top of my head, I think you're right on par. You know, you're doing a lot within your general fund budget, where you see other
Yeah.
communities maybe borrowing, and then have the debt payment in the general fund budget. That's about the only kind of difference.
Yeah. So we're not borrowing at the same rate as other communities?
No, because you have more of those functions, like you see, you have approximately 14 million of projects of capital in your budget that you're carrying forward. I'm addressing. Look like I confused you. That's good.
I don't think I've seen him confused. Yes, Counselor.
Are you going to review your findings?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll wait till then, till my next questions.
Yeah, and then, so you should have 3 reports. The other report is the single audit, the uniform guidance. That is a compliance type audit. That is on your federal funds. Like I said, you receive about $12 million in federal funds. And that's what's triggering why you have to be audited every year. You expend over $750,000, so you're into the single audit. Traditionally, your grant management has been very sound. That when I mean, like when you get a federal grant, you're using it for the compliance requirements are in place. So like CDBG, they understand their compliance requirements and the accounting of it, and it ends up in the right places. So typically, your grant management has been very good. So not any findings there. And then the third report, you'll see it's communication of those charged with governance. We kind of changed it up this year as compared to prior years with management letters. A new standard came out. We kind of merged our management letter into this format. And you can say we had no difficulties performing the audit. You know, we know scope limitations. No one told us, geez, you can't look at this, which is always good. And then you have a few accounting estimates in your financial statements, like OPEB that we talked about. And then you also have capital assets, a useful life. So we have to disclose what estimates are that you have in your financial statements. And then we did, our audit procedures, we did have a few adjustments proposed to your general ledger. One being on the overlay that was corrected and accepted.
Will you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so
Thank
the allowance for abatements and exemptions, I still call it overlay. The assessor goes on your recap. It's for doubtful accounts for abatements issued for real estate and personal property taxes. The amount wasn't being properly reconciled back to the assessor's records and the balance it holds. The abatements on the general ledger were going directly to deferred revenue instead of to the allowance account, so we proposed an adjustment. I'd say it was like $234,000, does that sound about right? So again, you know, we identify, hey, what was the procedures in place, how did this happen? And then the ability to identify in the financial statements wasn't there, so new procedures put in place. It was rectified and going forward. So, but we did propose an adjustment for that. And that was one of our comments at the bottom there. It's one of our bullet points. So I think that's been rectified going forward once it's been identified. Another kind of recommendation we had is certain funds are allowed to keep their own interest, like stabilization fund. So if you vote $1 million into a stabilization fund, the $1 million gets to sit and isolate into a bank account, and then the investment income becomes part of that fund. And then as you vote money out of the stabilization fund, that should decrease the fund, and a corresponding bank transfer should take place. So you always want the funds that earn its own interest to kind of mirror the general ledger. So the risk of financial reporting miscommunication isn't there. For instance, the general ledger is always boss. I don't know if anyone plays pitch, but it's always, so general ledger always is the numbers you should go by when you're looking at financials. But you can look at the bank statement too, and if say like the general fund, the general ledger has $2 million in stabilization, but the bank account is $1.2 million because the treasurer didn't make a transfer yet. that can, when you look, can cause confusion, especially, like I said, municipal finance is complex. Some people that are not, familiar into the weeds with municipal finance will oftentimes look at the bank statement. Well, how much do we have in stabilization, and go with the bank statement amount. So that can lead to, complexities and interest being earned in the wrong fund. Again, CPA. Again, as you collect property tax with CPA, it should be going into the bank account, and then as you expend CPA money, it should be transferred out. So it's just a matter of timing. Doesn't mean cash isn't being balanced, it's just the investment income isn't going to the right fund.
Okay.
So we'd recommend putting procedures in place to make sure bank transfers are happening more periodically. So it's not a major issue, but it's more to reduce the complexities.
Go ahead.
I think I finished.
Because I read a paragraph of yours,
Yep.
and I know throughout your time here as our auditor in the city, you have stated the following are some items we had identified as areas for improvement and discussed with management.
Yep.
And I'm always concerned about that. As a result, the city of having various special accounts, which you were just talking about, that earn interest, trust funds, OPED, CPA, actual cash transfers are necessary between funds. For such items as city council votes or actual expenditures that are paid out of the general cash, but not paid out of the specific bank account, and you were just mentioning about the bank accounts and that.
Correct.
By not transferring funds, this causes accounting problems and also results in the specific funds not receiving the correct amount of interest. We recommend that the treasurers adopt procedures to ensure that the transfers of funds are occurring in a timely fashion and are proper.
Yes. You said it a lot better than I did.
So that, everything is okay? You're doing that?
They're going to do that going forward, but during '24, we found there was a lack of
Okay.
transfers.
Thank you.
I believe all these are being addressed. And again, they're not major areas, it's just areas of concern for us, I guess you call it.
Well, just staying on that
Yeah.
topic, so that's an accounting issue.
Yeah.
The interest is not necessarily traveling with the fund when a transfer is made.
Correct.
Okay, so I wanted to ask Director Nardi if that has been corrected or is being corrected?
Yes, we have gone through these. We are actually going to meet with Tom, the financial team, and go over these in detail, but Tom's team members have met with each of the directors to talk about these when they've found the issues. I mean, I don't know if this is prevalent with every account, but I think it was found in the accounts that they pulled.
Okay.
Yeah, mostly with the trust funds.
Right.
And is the trust fund a special revenue account? Give me an example of a special revenue account.
CPA fund, like Arts Council monies,
Okay.
various grants that can earn interest, like a library grant can earn interest.
And could you just speak briefly to the ambulance charges and how?
Yeah, so you have a third-party billing utilized for the ambulance, and has a receivable, has a listing of the accounts on there. Right now, you have procedures where you're reconciling the activity of that to the third-party billing. So you're reconciling the receipts that come into their report, which is probably the most important step. If they said, we're giving you this money and you're tracing it to the banks, that's what you're reconciling. But there's a second part of that reconciliation that we believe should take place, and it's on the receivable side. The receivable should be set up on your general ledger, and it should be reviewed. For instance, I think you had total outstanding, I think your total outstanding was 2.3 million, and accounts that are over 120 days old are 1.2 million. So again, a lot of that is a statutory write-off that it automatically gets written off, like through insurance. They're not going to reimburse X amount. But we kind of encourage that receivably set up on the general ledger so you can monitor it, and then also where the department is reviewing these older accounts.
And just going back to the unpaid property tax, did you say it was 1.6 million? And is that typical?
Yes.
That's typical, there's
Yeah.
that amount?
Yeah, so your collection rate, COVID threw a lot of this off for us because we had a lot of ratios we like to use before COVID, with like percentage of cash being deposited to the bank. That was a big procedure for us. We'd go to your bank and look at, like March is a big thing for motor vehicle excise, was typically more cash on motor vehicle excise. We go do a test where we want to see cash actually go into the bank. But now since COVID, a lot of people aren't paying cash anymore, so it kind of threw off our ratios. But collection rate with property taxes is big for us. And your collection rate should be 98 to 99%, and that's what is taking your collections divided by your commitment. And I think your collection rate's in that category. When you start getting down to 94, 92%, something's wrong with your property taxes somewhere in there, especially if you dip below 90%. So this is very typical. For a city your size, like you wouldn't want to see a $10 million receivable there, because that once either you're not collecting your property taxes, or you're sending it into tax title. So collection rate. So yeah, this is actually good.
Counselors, any more questions, any comments from Tom or the director before we wrap up? Thank you very much for your work here, and
Yeah.
I think we're going to have, I think due to our charter, we're going to have to let you go next time. We're supposed to switch, but we've really appreciated working with you, so.
Yeah, no, and then again, if you have any concerns like throughout the year, there's like areas of concern that come up, whether it's a revenue stream, I don't want to single out departments, but if you have some concerns, please reach out. 'Cause that helps us define risk where it is on your financial statements. Again, what we try to do, as you can see on your big revenue side, your property taxes, your intergovernmental, we can all do that through the offices here. So you get those secondary revenue streams to call them, like, parking. That's a secondary stream when we look at comparatively what you're collecting compared to your property taxes. So we try to look at those probably every 3 to 4 years, those outside departments. So again, if there's any concerns, please reach out.
Oh, so that's good. So if I called to have, to have an appointment to go over something in your report,
Yeah.
you can still do that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Excellent.
actually encourage that.
Yeah.
And again, if any areas of concern, we can definitely build it into our audit procedures. If it's, geez, I just don't like someone, go look at that apartment, I could probably talk you out of it. But if you had like legit concerns, like, we'd be happy to look at those areas.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tom.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
appreciate it. Yes, Director.
So I just wanted to go back to the comment about your question about us using or the capital improvement program. And I will state that I think the city is doing more capital projects because we had an increase in reserves due to ARPA. And the question about debt, so we do fill in our debt, but also I just wanted to point out when you use borrowing as a form of your capital improvement, that takes away recurring. And so we have been using more of our reserves because we had more since COVID. So we had cut back on borrowing. But I just want to say the communities that use more of their borrowing have less of their recurring revenue for other things, for other governmental services.
Could you explain that? Why do you have less recurring?
So you only have so much reoccurring revenue to use, and if you take it for borrowing, it's less available for
Oh, I see what
other
you're saying.
services that the city may want it to put it towards.
Okay.
And like I said, we have been since COVID using more of our reserves because we had them, and we've reduced our borrowing a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to know, Charlene, when you became our treasurer and you came into city council and Scanlon's were here, you said you both had a very good rapport with each other. What do you feel still about our auditor, Scanlon's?
So I think Scanlon Associates has been very responsive. All of our departments feel very comfortable reaching out to the auditor. I think having a good relationships when we have questions about how to handle something, especially when we have new personnel in positions, it's important that we have a relationship that we can reach out and say, how do I handle this? How do I do this? It's important when we get reports such as this, even though these aren't, I would say, significant. Correct me if I'm wrong if they're not. These aren't significant issues, but we have an opportunity to sit down and learn from them because municipal government finance is complicated. It takes a while. Sometimes you don't see something for 3 years or a year. You know, you don't see it every year. And it takes like 3 years to really understand it. So I think that's important. I also think with new people in place in our financial areas, it's important to have a firm that is familiar with how our books have looked over the last how many ever years, so that if something is not going properly, they would be the first to see it. Because if you bring in a new firm, they're going to be learning our books. I believe Scanlon Associates has the knowledge to say, you know, this is not regular. We're seeing something different. And I think that's important when you have turnover, and we've had a lot of retirements and turnover. Yeah. So I just want to say, yes, I appreciate the work that Tom and his team do for the city. I think they are fair. And the information that they provide is very helpful for us to make sure that our books are in good order and that we are adhering to the laws.
Thank you so much.
Yes. If I could just clarify something you said. The charter requires the city council to award a 3-year contract every 3 years.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to change auditors at that point.
Well, I thought you did have to change.
No, you can award a new contract to the same auditing firm.
I thought we had
You
to
have
change.
to award a contract every 3 years.
Oh,
just in
that's
case.
interesting. Well, I'm sorry I said that then.
I mean,
We haven't made that decision yet. But I thought last time we discussed it, we had discussed that we had to change firms every,
Well, we had a discussion around
Yes.
what Director Nardi was talking about, the fact that there had been turnover, and in fact, the city's auditor retired recently, and she felt, I think that was 2 years ago, I think she felt that it was advantageous for us at that point to stay with Scanlon because of the turnover in municipal government.
Yeah.
And I think when the next contract is awarded, we might explore again whether there's an alternative.
oh, I thought we were compelled to change. I didn't know we had
No,
a choice.
no.
Okay, that's good. Well, we'll you can throw your resume in. Yes.
And just to add one more thing, so one of the other things I think is important to note is usually auditors, auditing firms will change the team that bring in the head, the person that comes in and actually leads the audit is different. Therefore, you do have, so I had always heard or understood in my experience that the reason people would wanted to change the auditing firm was so they had a fresh set of eyes. So generally, they'll change the lead on the auditing team, so that person is a fresh set of eyes, but it's still with the same firm. So that is an option as well.
Good to know. Yes, I remember that conversation, and that we wanted the stability and the experience that we had already had. So, okay, well, Tom, thank you very much, and we'll follow up by email if we wanted to reach you. And
You can email me.
okay, okay, great. Hey, counselors, do you want to take us a short break? Are you okay to go on? Next would be, I believe, public comment. Yes. So, you guys okay? We'll just go right into public comment? Sure. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, you're welcome to stay, but we'll move on to public comment. And thanks again. I appreciate it for your thorough report. Yeah.
Thanks.
We'll just give him a minute. So if you're just joining us, we are going to start public comment, and we have a 3-minute, if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes, that would be ideal. And you can speak on anything. And if you'd like to ask a question, we'll try to track questions for later when we, I don't know, we could ask Director Nardi or Solicitor Seawald if you have a question involving them. Okay, you're going to time, right? Let's see if anyone, so if there's anyone in the room or on Zoom who would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to check and see if anyone signed up.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's okay. You can also just raise your hand. Oh, thank you. People in the room could just raise their hand, yeah, because we don't have a big group tonight, so that's fine. And so,
Hi, Meg Robbins, Ward 4.
okay, was it not on there?
There's nothing on it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
No, that's fine.
You ready?
I'm sorry, yes, go ahead. Sorry,
Let's say my name again.
please do. Thank you.
Meg Robbins, Ward 4. I know that you're going to be talking about the measure that Councilors Rothenberg and Dubs brought before you last year that was reconsidered again when it was introduced by Councilor Maori on opting in to allow the City Council to have the power to increase the budget for the school as presented and approved by the school committee. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about how you can increase it or what you can increase and what you can't increase and legal opinions about it. But I want to remind us that all this 40-year-old opt-in does is to give City Council a check and balance to increase the amount that you give to the schools. It doesn't tell you how to do it. It doesn't tell you where you should get the money from. It doesn't tell you how much you should do. It doesn't have any guidance on any of that. All it does is say that you can take money away and you can add money in. And that is sincerely what a check and a balance is in a democratic system. I teach history. This is really important in our democratic city where only the mayor has the power to add or subtract from the budget that we use to fund everything that's important to us in the city. So the question in front of you in terms of your reference is simply to say, we'd like to have the power to do that if it should occur to us to do it, and not to be afraid of. It could invite a discussion. It could invite some input. It could invite different opinions. It's simply about having the power to take money away and to put money in. And I really urge you to add that to your toolbox about what you can do in the future and to safeguard that for future councilors and for future mayors and for future city systems. Thank you for considering it.
Thank you, Meg. Let me just look online. I don't see any hands on Zoom. Just make sure. Does anyone in the room want to speak? Yes, Ms. McNally.
Hi, everybody. Kathy McNally, Gleason Road, Northampton, Ward 1. So I'm here to ask you guys to think about voting yes on opt-in for similar reasons to Meg. It's actually a way for you all to become even more involved in the budget process. The school budget is the largest part of our budget, and yet the City Council is a little bit siloed from the school committee and from the mayor in terms of what they know. Listening to you talk to Mr. Scanlon here, it was obvious you know the budget, you understand it, you're facile with it, you're comfortable with it, and I really think you would be great and so enlarged in your scope by having opt-in. Opt-in does not mean you have to increase the budget. Just like you can decrease the budget, the charter allows you to decrease the budget, you rarely do it. Occasionally you have done it in important times, but it's not something that you're threatening to use. Here's what I think is the most important part. It's going to put you in the game of city government more than you are. I think that our city, many of us are crying out for you to be more involved. Meg talked about checks and balances. That's a great word. I remember it from high school civics. But I think just having a say. So the mayor talked about robust collaboration. But really, frankly, with our charter, we have a mayor that has practically sole power. When you have the ability, the potential to increase the school budget, what that's going to mean is people are going to come to you and say, we want you to increase the budget. They're doing that now, but they're going to be more motivated to do it. It is going to be a lot more work for you because now they can ask you. Now, I had a conversation with a city councilor who said, we can always ask the mayor to increase the budget or to use reserves and increase the budget. It doesn't ever happen because there's no political pressure. Now there will be pressure. So I think it will make more accountability, more transparency. I don't think it will hurt you, and I don't think it means you have to increase the budget. You do have the power to ask the mayor to consider using reserve savings, et cetera. As Mr. Scanlon said, it's all one big pot of money, to use that. You don't have to take money from another department, which I know can be difficult. But, you know, maybe it's worth it considering. But you can ask the mayor. That's a very powerful power. And I guess my question to you all, to city councilors, is why would you not want the power to have a say? Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Kathy. Yes. Nathan, come on up.
Thank you very much. Nathan Chung, North End resident. Yeah, I think you just want to consider a lot of different factors. You know, the school department is the largest one, and it's one of the unique departments with the 9 elected officers and who make a very small symbolic salary. I looked it up. It's on the Administrative Code, Chapter 5, I think. You know, school committee members make $9,300 a year, so that's $775 a month. And city councilors, thank you for all your services. The president makes $2,100 a year, $21,000, excuse me, and the rest of the members make $16,900 a year. That's a 2024 amount, and then it goes up 2% every year, from my understanding. So you're here serving the people in limited time constraints. You got children, you got dinner obligations, you got other obligations. You're here. So, you know, one thing to consider is like, is the system being set up so you can work effectively, you know, while also being within the constraint, both financial and time constraint? And I think one thing to consider is there's just been a lot of political pressure in Facebook and other media. That's honestly, for me, seems like goes beyond just actually having a meaningful debate. It's a psychological tactic to make people uncomfortable and tire people out. One person asked me during a debate why I yelled at a school committee member during a meeting earlier this year. That was on February 13th. Well, that's because this member was yelling at other school committee members. So I yelled at this person to stop. That's what happened. That's what I've been observing. There's emotional outbursts, other issues that happens in public meetings, you know. And for a very small symbolic pay you're doing, working part-time, that's a lot to ask for. So the question is, this opt-in order, it has pros and cons. The con is to consider whether it's gonna result in just more emotional, unfair, in my opinion, political and emotional pressure on top of the limited hours and limited pay you're receiving. So just something to think about. And again, thank you for all you're doing, being here in this evening, skipping your dinners or maybe grabbing a really late dinner. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nathan.
Hey, I accidentally took this sign-up sheet because I didn't want anybody else to speak, but Nathan, just kidding. So I want to put it
Long
back here.
grift. She's been waiting for years to take that away. All right. Let's just see. Anyone else in the room? Yes, come on, Luke. Good evening.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Luke Rotello, Ward 5, Northampton. I really don't think I can put it any better than Meg and Kathy did, but I would also emphasize the additional point that this is about respect for the school committee as a democratic body as well. You know, if, like, like taking Nathan's point into account that like, you know, this is a position that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time commitments. It's very strenuous at times, especially during recent budget cycles. You know, if we are to respect the decisions that are made, to respect the products of the work that is done by this body, which is, you know, which we elect every 2 years, I think that also entails actually granting meaningful political authority to them, regardless of where the mayor may stand on their decisions. So, you know, opting in is also a means of actually, you know, acting upon the decisions and findings of the school committee, empowering them to actually have a say in the governance of our city as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Luke. Okay, anyone else before we start our next agenda item, which is the opt-in provision discussion? No, okay. Oh, yep. Hypervigilant, paying attention. Okay, so let me just pull up the agenda. So counselors, I don't see Counselor Elkins. She may join us, but counselors, we are going to issue a recommendation tonight on the order to accept the Chapter 329 Act of 1987. That's the opt-in. And I will start, if it's okay with you, by just talking about the meeting today with with DLS and the Department of Revenue. Let me get, Counselor Moulton, is it okay if I talk about your questions? Because I got answers. Okay.
Please do. Thank you.
Yes. Let's get a little more organized. Okay. Yeah, so today, President Jarrett, myself, Director Nardi, Solicitor Seawald, and the mayor met with DLS, the Department of Local Services, to ask some questions. Excuse me. And basically, what they said was on the issue that we were talking about at last council meeting about whether, if we opted in, could council use money from stabilization funds, or can we only cut budgets? The answer was they defer to us. They defer to our charter. They defer to our legal counsel. And so, as you know, Solicitor Seawald had sent us a letter reversing his opinion from last year, and in his opinion, council cannot use cannot use the stabilization accounts. But yeah, so that's where we're at. That's the opinion of Solicitor Seawald. The state kind of is silent on this one and defers to our decision. So if Solicitor Seawald had a different decision, they would honor that as well. They're not here to tell us yay or nay on that. That's really between us and our solicitor and our community here, right? And let's see. I'm just going to. Here we go. I knew I had your question somewhere. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Excuse me. So. I'm just going to go over the questions I received. I asked the question to them, why did the state afford this? Why did the state institute this? What instigated it? What need did they see? And DLS said that this was after Prop 2.5 and in the 80s, and the communities were feeling the pinch, and they wanted the ability to give the schools more funds in a stressed kind of financial situation, which it was as folks got used to the Chapter 2 and Prop 2.5. So let's see. Okay, so the question is, if the City Council adopts Chapter 329, may it be by 2/3 vote, increase the school budget only by the exact amount recommended by school committee, or by any amount up to that figure? And the answer, and Director Nardi, if you can obviously chime in. The answer was that we can recommend it. The council could recommend a different amount. So, correct. So it doesn't have to be what school committee. It can be under or more or less than the school committee is recommending to us.
It can't be more.
It can't be more?
Yes, so
Yeah.
it can be a maximum of what they voted, but it can be up to, so it's less or equal to what they voted. So you can't vote
Well-
more than they voted. So say they voted $1 million, you couldn't make it $2 million.
Yeah, what was confusing about that part was that there's no specific school committee process.
They did say the approval was the school committee vote. The school committee's recommendation is their vote. So whatever budget they voted is their
Right.
recommendation.
Yes, but then he said that they don't have to, I thought he said that they don't have to have a specific, number recommendation, so how?
No, he said there's no specific process for that recommendation.
Okay.
But I believe my interpretation was we all agreed on that call that the actual vote of the school committee is their recommendation. So whatever
Right.
budget they voted is their recommended
Okay. Thank
budget.
you for clarifying that. Okay. So another question asked is, if the city council by 2/3 vote approves an amount higher, wait, is that the same question? City council in there. Okay. This is the question we were just going over, which is, must city council reduce other parts of the budget to approve, if we approve a higher amount, do we have to cut other budgets? And let's see. So, and the state is basically silent on that, and they defer to us. And then, we have this kind of recommendation or ruling from Solicitor Seawald. So the state, in the state's eyes, we could take money from stabilization accounts, except that our solicitor is ruling differently. So they defer to us. They don't. I guess I should say that they don't actually weigh in on that. Yes.
I would word that slightly different, because I think what they were saying is that it's either by our charter, and that they don't feel it's stated, but they did say it has to stay within the levy limit.
Yep.
So therefore, if you tax to the levy limit, which Northampton does, then, so their point was, it's not just you could do whatever you want if you had a different attorney. What they were also saying is, if your charter doesn't state it, you still have to stay within the levy limit, and when we present a budget to you, it's in the levy limit. So you can't just take from reserves, because there is nowhere you're increasing it. You can't take it from reserves and go outside the levy limit.
Right. Well, you're talking about specific, the thing I would like to, when we talk about this opt-in, is this is kind of a long range, so you're talking specifically about, right now.
Anytime, historically, Northampton has put forward a budget that is at the levy limit.
Yeah, okay. But I'm saying that, the state doesn't weigh in on whether we get money from stabilization accounts or not. If Solicitor Seawald's recommendation or interpretation from last year was still standing, the state doesn't have a problem with that. It's really back, they lobbed it back to us, basically, right? And so, okay, let's see.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So the quote that we got from Attorney Seawald, where he did say that he did make an error on the top of the letter, but then suggested about the stabilization fund and so forth like that. So what I'm hearing now, I know we got to stay within that levy limit, but we can't take and use reserves. Can we or can we not? That's a big issue.
Well, I mean, Solicitor Seawald does not recommend it. His interpretation of the charter is that it's not in sync with our charter. That's his new interpretation.
Not use it?
I mean, the thing, yes.
You can't do it without the mayor's recommendation. So she would need to bring forward the order. If you were going to use reserves, you can't just do it under the opt-in without a recommendation from the mayor, without the mayor bringing forward another order. I guess that's Attorney Seawald's opinion.
Right. That's a good point. The mayor, yes, we could work with the mayor, we could recommend it to the mayor, but the mayor has to initiate according to Solicitor Seawald, the mayor has to initiate the appropriation from stabilization accounts.
Okay.
And that's kind of our historical trend. They talked a little bit about, you know, there's not a case law on that, which is where you get a definitive answer. So what the Department of Local Services was looking at is like, what are your historical practices on this? And so that's what Solicitor Seawald was also kind of taking in, is traditionally, historically, the mayor has generated all the, you know, the financial orders from that are appropriations. So that's why he landed there, Solicitor Seawald. Yeah.
So my question is, just hearing from our finance director, that even with the reserves, we can do a recommendation to the mayor. What if she doesn't approve it?
So I just want to be clear. So my understanding was, so in order, yes, you can always make a recommendation. Today, you can make a recommendation to the mayor that she bring back forth any order for anything that you would like to be supported. That's part of your process today. As far as my understanding with DLS is they were saying that they do not get involved with, so I guess I want to be clear. DLS agreed that you could not vote the money from stabilization or without the mayor's recommendation.
That's right.
But, DLS said they deferred to us.
They defer to our charter, and if it's not clear. But my interpretation was that you could opt in, and you could vote an amount up to what the school committee voted, any school committee voted.
Yeah.
Under the levy limit, but you could not take it from reserves without the recommendation of the mayor, without another order. And that's what Ken said, the attorney, said you could bring an order outside of the budget to increase it.
Yeah. I guess I interpret what he said differently. To me, I asked him several times, and he kept saying he defers to.
Right. Ultimately, they will not put that in writing, and they will defer to our past practice and to our attorney's opinion. Yeah. But the stance of Attorney Seawald is that, I think it's Chapter 44, Section 32, states that outside of the budget process, any appropriations have to be upon the recommendation of the mayor.
Okay.
So even if we do the opt-in, we have to have that recommendation from the mayor?
So if the city council votes the opt-in option, they have the power to increase the school committee budget
Right, I know.
up to the levy limit using the budget that's before them. So yes, you would have to make cuts in the existing budget in order to make up whatever dollar amount you wanted to increase the school committee by.
So what I'm hearing from you, Director Nardine, is that, yes, we can make cuts. To me, it sounds like we're pitting different departments amongst each other by doing that.
But there's the other option in which we talk to the mayor about it, and we negotiate with the mayor, and we have, as the commenters pointed out, some political, pressure that built from opting in. So if we're at the point where we're talking about cutting departments, we can opt in without using the option. We can decide not to do that, and we can discuss with the mayor, that we would like to do that. And what I've seen with this mayor is that she's very responsive with that. That's how we got a mid-year appropriation, is she, she took in, she kind of read the room on what the school committee was feeling was the right thing to do. And so I think with this mayor, at least, that's a real possibility that we would have that discussion with the mayor, and instead of cutting departments. And speaking of that, you had a question. Let's see, there was a question about that. Hold on. There was a question about, I asked about if city council doesn't agree on wants to opt in, but use the opt-in, but doesn't agree on which cuts, we have to agree on that. That would take 6 counselors all agreeing specifically on what cuts to make if we were going to cut the budgets. We can't say, well, we want to give them the money, but I think it should come from here, and I think it should come from here. We'd all have to agree, well, at least 6 of us. I think
that kind of reminds me as an example.
Yeah.
When we did the ordinance, if I can say and remember, that Karen Foster, you and I, we didn't have to do this, but we did in due respect of the mayor, of the ordinance that we put in on the limit up in Florence on the marijuana shop. And because we heard all those voices, that was very important for us. The mayor didn't agree when we went into her office and we told her exactly the many voices, what they wanted, and all our research that we had done. So right now I'm hearing that if we want to go ahead and do the opt-in, we bring it to the mayor's attention that this is what we're thinking of doing. And if she says no, we have the authority to move on.
We could decide we don't have an appetite for cutting, other parts of the budget. Right. Or we can. So yes, it's an option. We'll have an option.
I called Amherst, and I talked with the council clerk, Athena. She was excellent. And she told me that out of 11 councilors voted yes to opt in, and also 1 did not. And I asked her, I said, what was the outcome? They all agreed, the 11 of them, that it was there, and they would only use it when they had to. And I was happy to talk with her twice. We had a good conversation. East Hampton does not have it.
Right.
That I know.
Yeah, I think they explored it, but then they didn't. We talked about that today, yeah.
Yes, Mayor Scherer confirmed, speaking with the mayor of East Hampton, that they did not opt in.
Right, they did.
Right.
And there was some interesting history that this is really only for cities, which it wasn't clear to me. Towns cannot, it's not an option that's provided to them.
It's not applicable to their process.
Right. Yes.
So do you have more that you want to report?
No, that's it. And of course, Director Nardi, if you have anything to add. I think that's all the questions.
Did you want to add anything, Director Nardi?
No, I just want to clarify that the process, as you talk about when you take the reserves off the table, you have the same process with opt-in to discuss it and work with the mayor today that you would with the opt-in.
So I just wanted to go back to the mid-year appropriation because my summary of that would be a bit different. That came from the school committee, and the mayor brought it to us with no recommendation. And the request was for $500,000 with no specificity.
Right.
And what we asked was for Superintendent Bonner to come back to us with a list of priorities, which she did. We then, the council, without the recommendation of the mayor, accepted that $294,000 mid-year appropriation. So that really, I feel, was driven more by the council than the mayor.
Well, I'm just commenting that the mayor did not have to bring us that order. And to me, that shows someone who's responding to what's going on in her community. And that could happen if we were at a place where we felt like we needed to use the opt-in option. I feel like I could talk to the mayor about that, and I have some hope that we would be able to negotiate that with her, just like we kind of ended up negotiating a different amount.
Yes, well, I agree that it was responsive of the mayor as the chair of the school committee to bring us something that the school committee had voted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think we took the steps that ultimately got that $294,000.
Yes, I don't want to take it away from us. That's right.
So I have one more question.
Yeah.
What school committee? I haven't heard them say anything about opting in.
Yeah, I mean, well, we talked about it at the Budget and Property meeting. I don't know. I think that they have discussed it, but.
They have discussed it, and did they?
Well, I'm conflicted, we discussed it last year, too, so that's part of,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank
So, yeah. But yeah, that's a good, yes, and it does have to be initiated by them. We can't opt in without the school committee recommending it.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now, can we, I believe Attorney Seawald is available to us?
I might have to just give him a heads up, though.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, in fact, can we take a quick recess while you do that?
Yes, that's a great idea, sorry. So is 5 minutes enough? Okay, so we're going to take a 5-minute recess we'll be back here at 7:20. Okay, we're back in the Committee on Finance, discussing an order to accept Chapter 329 of the Acts of 1987, the opt-in provision, and we were getting Solicitor Seawald was going to join us, but so we're going to look out for him. Councilors, do you have any other thoughts or questions while we wait for Solicitor Seawald? Any other thoughts? Yeah. Okay. Well,
Okay, so
yeah.
now I'm thinking.
Okay.
So what I'm actually hearing
Yeah.
is no matter what,
Uh-huh.
that we have to talk with the mayor first about what we would like to recommend. That we are looking at opting in.
Not if we reduce other parts of the budget. We don't need her permission for that if we're opted in. Right.
If we opt in.
If we opt in, yes. That's it, the scenario.
First to tell her that this is what we're going to do.
I mean, I think we would, but we're not beholden to do that. Right, yeah, of course, but we're not, we're not required to do that, but I'm sure we would. Okay. Yeah, no, it's kind of complicated stuff. Did you see him?
Yes.
Okay, so, Solicitor Seawald, can you? There, good evening, thank you for joining us. Yeah, Councilor Moulton wanted to discuss the opt-in with you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm looking at page 2 of your April 9th memo in which you reassessed your opinion about the City Council's ability to increase the school budget and what sources of money it could use to do that. I believe we've settled one question tonight so far, and that's that the City Council could, if we adopt the opt-in procedure, we could then vote to increase the school budget by any amount up to what the school committee has recommended. Right. So if the City Council were to do that, the options then for identifying money to pay for that, as I understand it, what I'm hearing tonight are we could request the mayor to send us an order to use money from free cash or a stabilization account.
Correct.
And if the mayor did not do that, then the City Council would have to cut other departments' budgets within the budget that the mayor had submitted to us to bring it into balance. Is that correct?
Correct.
And if the city...
And keep it under the levy limit.
And keep it under the levy limit. And if the City Council, if 6 councilors did not agree on how to cut other departmental budgets by June 30th, then the budget that the mayor originally submitted would take effect. Is that correct?
Can you repeat that question?
If the City Council, between the vote to adopt a higher than the mayor recommended school budget, were unable to have 6 councilors agree on cuts from other parts of the municipal budget to balance it, then by June 30th, then the mayor's original filed budget would take effect. Is that correct?
Well, you're going to have to approve the budget by June 30th, or the mayor's budget is going to, in its entirety, go into effect. The consequence is that you would, if you vote to increase the school budget after opting in and don't adequately cut other line items, then your budget's going to be out of balance. You're going to be over the levy limit, and DOR will not certify free cash and set your tax rate because you're going to be out of balance.
Okay, so
So the answer to that is, at some point, the city council is going to have to cut other line items. And, you know, yes, the increase is contingent on finding other line items to decrease.
In order to bring the budget into balance under the levy limit, otherwise there's going to be DOR repercussions, correct?
There's going to be DOR repercussions.
Yes, okay. So there's really two actions then required by the city council. One is to approve the higher than mayor recommended school budget, and then the second is to, if the mayor does not agree to file an order for use of stabilization or reserve funds, then the city council, 6 councilors, have to agree on the amounts of money to cut from other departmental budgets.
That's correct.
So, okay, thank you.
Solicitor Seawald, if council opted in and decided to use the opt-in provision, at any point in the process, we can cease using it.
I'm not sure I understand your.
So if we decide, if school committee recommended a higher amount, and then council, and we were opted in, if council got to the point of having to decide to cut other budgets, we can just say, no, we don't want to do that, and then we're not beholden to go through the entire process just because we're opted in or because school committee recommended it or because we're discussing it in council, right?
Oh, no, you're not.
Right. So that's a decision we could make at that time in the future when we're looking at a budget and we're looking at other departments. If we look and we decide we don't want to do it at that point, we don't have to do that.
Oh, I'm thinking
Right.
it does not require that
Right.
you actually
Thank you.
use the process to increase the school budget.
Right. But we can start the process in terms of, of talking to the mayor about it or saying we want to do it and then decide we're not up for it.
No one is requiring you to
Right.
increase the school budget. That's a decision for the city council to make.
Okay.
It sort of makes logistic sense to join the motions to add to the school budget and to cut other budgets if that's what the city council decides to do.
Yeah. Okay.
But you really can't have one without the other.
Okay.
We're under the levy limit, which we're not, and we've never been in the 13 years that I've been here.
Got it. Thank you. Is there any other questions for Solicitor Seawald? We're not, no, yeah, I'm sorry, because I'd have to recognize all the members of the public if, but Solicitor Seawald will be with us tomorrow night. And,
Be available if needed, yes.
Councilors, do you want Solicitor Seawald to stick around while we discuss this, or are you, okay? Yeah.
He answered my
Okay.
questions,
I
but
think
I...
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Solicitor. We'll see you tomorrow.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Good night. Okay. All right. That was
Get out of COVID.
Yeah. And President Jarrett was at the meeting today, too, so he's another resource for tomorrow. Okay, counselors, so we need to, let's see, okay, right. Make a recommendation. I don't think Councilor Elkins will be joining us. Let me just see.
I thought
And-
she wasn't going to come to this one.
She wasn't, then she was, and now she cannot. So, it's the three of us, an odd number. What do you feel like doing? I'm glad we get to talk about it tomorrow. It's actually, while it's fresh in our heads, because it's a lot of detail there. So, I mean, I think I introduced this order. My feeling is the issue of the stabilization, whether we could pull from stabilization reserves or having to cut other budgets. I mean, with the answer that we received today, to me, that's even more of an argument to opt in, because boy, are there a lot of checks in this process. It is rigorous. It's going to be kind of difficult to use. It's going to be work. It's kind of an uphill battle, frankly, since we don't generally cut budgets. So to me, the response we got today that we will, to utilize this, we would have to go to the other hoop of looking at all the budgets, the departmental budgets and cutting them, is another kind of safety rail, guardrail in the process, so that we don't have future counselors kind of willy-nilly giving money or whatever. So to me, that kind of solidifies my resolve to support the opt-in. How are you two feeling in terms of recommendation? Yeah.
I have not changed my opinion from last year. It is not, in my view, municipal budgeting is done over a period of months. To have the city council in the last month of that process be attempting to agree on where money should be cut from other departments, as Councilor Labarge says, it is pitting department against department. And I don't think that creating that uncertainty and throwing potentially every municipal employee into not knowing whether they're going to have a job is the best way to develop a municipal budget. So I'm not convinced. 38 years, city councils in Northampton have not seen a need to use this, and I'm not convinced that we have that need now.
I'll just, okay, I didn't see your hand. I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think that that's what is actually happening with the school department, though, is that they are every year receiving pink slips, don't know if they're going to have a job. I mean, I think the whole budget, you could look at a whole city budget as pitting needs against each other. It's one way of looking at it. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as a community conversation about what is needed in the moment. That's just my feeling on it. Councilor Labarge.
What I would like to do, because we're going to have full city council tomorrow night, I would like to make a neutral recommendation to full city council.
Yeah.
I mean, just hearing what we heard tonight, I respected what I heard tonight, and also with our finance director here, explained it very thoroughly, and also with Councilor Melton, okay? The pitting against other departments, I'm hearing that, even from former councilors, about their pitting. And what I want to do is go over all my minutes I have and wait till tomorrow night to hear from every one of the councilors how they feel. And I'm going to do a little bit of research here. Plus the fact I was very surprised about Amherst, how they did opt in and are only going to use it if they have to.
That was good investigative research.
And East Hampton, I cannot figure out why they've never opted in.
I think I was told, I don't know for sure, what I was just heard was that they discussed it with the mayor and they found another way to do what they wanted to do in terms of what they wanted to give the schools. So that's kind of, yes, that's what I've heard. Well, and I guess that's the point that I wanted to kind of drive home, is that this is also a negotiating tool with the mayor, right? And so that's something to think about. We're not obligated to cut budgets if we truly don't want to, but by opting in, we kind of command a bigger conversation about it. But
if Councilor Labarge was suggesting that as a motion for a neutral recommendation, I will second that. I think there's been enough new information presented today and tonight that I want to give all of our colleagues time to digest that and think about it, so a neutral recommendation is fine with me.
Okay, any discussion, so you're seconding?
Yes.
Okay, you got that. So any discussion on the motion? Okay, so I guess we can eye it. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, say nay. Nay.
Nay.
I like roll call better. Kind of feel like, so the neutral recommendation passes, and I'll explain tomorrow, how I felt. I feel very strongly about how, I'm very clear on what I feel on this, but I'll present the neutral recommendation at tomorrow's meeting. So we're done with that agenda item. Thank you, counselors. We only have one other item on our agenda, and then we'll be finished.
I know.
Maybe I should share. So the last agenda item is just a very brief report on the March 24th meeting I joined with Budget and Property Subcommittee. And basically, I attached the meeting link in the agenda, and it's not that long, and it actually was a great meeting. Dr. Bonner and Bobby were there, so you can watch it. I was just going to highlight one slide from that.
I saw it.
Oh, you saw the slide? Or, okay, let me.
The meeting, yeah.
Oh, the meeting. Yeah, good for you. Yeah, I'm glad you watched that. Okay, let me just see where the.
Find out.
Let me just pull up that one slide. So basically what we did, and where? Do you have the slide? It's okay. I'll find it. Maybe I didn't. Unbelievable. Okay. So basically at that meeting, it was before the school committee rendered their recommendation for a strong budget. So this was before that. And they went over, and yes, and that was there too. So we looked at the three budget options basically that school committee was exploring. The base budget, we actually don't need the slide. It's okay. It was the base budget, which was the 4%. Which was the kind of the mayor's kind of default recommendation, the level service budget, and then the strong budget. And so both with the what Dr. Bonner kind of said at that meeting was she felt we were to the bone with our current services and cuts. She felt like was concerned about further cuts. She felt like we had cut what we could cut. And so they didn't, that's as far as we got. We didn't issue a recommendation, but we discussed those three options and and looked at the nuances. It was very illuminating. I learned a lot about the budgeting process there. And so that's what, and you can, as you can see, in the recording that we went over those, but that's about. I think that's. I'm trying to think if we talked about anything else. We talked about enrollment a little bit. We talked about the cuts. Yes.
Yes. Also, too, on that meeting, if I recall, I think it was Stein who mentioned about when we're doing our budget. Say we have Bonner coming in, and we have their finance director. Of having somebody on the finance team also, like a Not with Arnett, and also Stein and I think Davis or something. One of them come in also and talk about their budget.
Oh, you mean for the hearings?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I thought that was very important because I've not seen that done as long as I've been a counselor. And I think they should be invited in with the superintendent so they can speak first. Because one thing that I can say, I have not heard anything, especially from Bonner and Bonnie.
It's not a good cut.
Did the school committee actually look at every department? I'm talking about every department like we have to, okay? We look at all our departments, how many staff, what the payroll is, their equipment right down the line. And that was never brought up at all. And I have concerns about that, of knowing, did they go through their departments? I'm talking about maintenance, I'm talking about secretaries. They might have part-time secretaries, just like we're being told to opt in, okay? We'd have to look of who we're going to go ahead and get rid of. Not just here in the main building, all the departments. And we didn't hear anything. Did they look at their departments like secretaries right down the line?
You mean within the school department?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, we were discussing that, and I remember that because we were discussing the safety concerns about cutting the clerical staff and not having enough staff at the door and such.
We didn't
Yes.
hear that from Bonner and either.
I thought we
The finance director, no.
You mean at that meeting, the budget and property meeting?
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When
yeah.
they came in for the budget hearing.
Oh, yes, correct. Correct, yes.
To know all that.
Right, and I think, yes, and I think maybe I'll check in with the superintendent ahead of time to
Yes.
kind of make sure, kind of she knows what we're looking for in that budget hearing. Yes, agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, yes.
Yes, I also listened to that recording, and the other new element this year is that the superintendent made available to the city councilors the school department budget book, this. So
Right.
we have that this year, so there's a lot of information
Yes.
in that
Yes.
presentation in here that we wouldn't necessarily get at the public hearing.
That's right.
Councilor Labarge, yeah,
I understand that.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I finally successfully shared the slide, but it's almost unreadable. So anyway, does anyone have any more any questions about that meeting, or?
No.
If not, anyone have any new business? No. Well, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye, aye. Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you.